In this video, you will learn about Docker from a beginner's point of view. Docker has recently gained a lot of attraction in the industry, and it has a significant impact on the development of new applications. When a developer sends a file for the production state or someone else's system, it's likely that they don't have the same operating system. Docker offers a solution to this problem by reproducing the environment. In this type of situation, a virtual machine can also be useful. However, Docker has several advantages over virtual machines. It takes up less space and starts up quickly. It has superior performance because it is hosted in a single Docker engine. Docker is a free and open platform for building, delivering, and operating apps. Docker allows you to decouple your apps from your infrastructure, allowing you to swiftly release software. You may drastically minimize the time between writing code and executing it in production by leveraging Docker's approaches for shipping, testing, and deploying code quickly. Purpose of Docker. Developers can write code in a Docker container and share it with their peers. They use Docker to deploy their applications and run automated and manual tests in a test environment. Developers can repair defects in the development environment before deploying them to the test environment for testing and validation. When the testing is through, it's just a matter of releasing the revised image to the production environment to get the repair to the customer. Now, let us take a look at Docker architecture. Docker is built on a client-server model. The Docker client communicates with the Docker daemon, which handles the construction, execution, and distribution of your Docker containers. You can execute the Docker client and daemon on the same machine, or you can link a Docker client to a Docker daemon that is located elsewhere. A REST API, Unix sockets, or a network interface are used by the Docker client and daemon to communicate. Docker Compose is another Docker client that allows you to interact with applications made up of many containers. Let us see what are the prerequisites. Before you begin using Docker, you must be familiar with the fundamental concepts of Windows and numerous apps that are already available on the Windows operating system. It would also assist that if you have some Linux experience. How to get started with Docker? The first step is to download and install Docker. If you're using a Mac or Windows system, the Docker desktop program is suggested because it includes everything you'll need for the command line as well as a GUI, graphical user interface, for inspecting your running containers. You'll be able to use Docker from the command line after it's been installed. You should install the Docker extension for VS Code or IDE in addition to the Docker desktop. When writing Docker files, this will provide language support. Let's have a look at what Docker files are. Docker files include the code for creating a Docker image and running your program in a container. You must Dockerize your app. To do so, generate a Docker file in the project's root directory. The next thing you should know is how to use the Docker build command to create a Docker image. There are a variety of options you can pass with the command. But for now, let's learn about tag or T. It's a name tag, so it'll be easier for you to remember, so you can find it later. Set up the login on the Docker Hub before establishing a tag name. After that, type whatever you want to call the image after the username. wizlab/demoapp, for example. You can also include version numbers separated by a colon if you desire. Add a path to your Docker file. Once this is done, it will generate an image where you can execute it. You can use the image as a base image for creating new images, or you can use it to run containers. Now, let's execute it locally on our machine. The Docker run command can be used to accomplish this. You can give it an image ID or a tag name, and it will build a container, which is a running process. The localhost 8080 address will be visible in the terminal, but the same address will not be visible in the browser. The reason for this is that you must expose port 8080 not just to your Docker file, but also to the outside world. The next ability to learn is debugging. Many times an error may occur, and you'll need to examine the logs and figure out how to go into the container and start interacting with the command line to figure out what's wrong. Docker Desktop comes in handy in instances like this. You can browse and search through all of the logs in the operating container. By pressing the CLI button, you can run commands in the container. This will take you to the root of the container's file system. Try to keep each container to a single process. You'll need many containers if your app requires multiple processes. Docker has created a tool called Docker Compose specifically for this purpose. Assume you already have a Node app, but it requires access to your MySQL database. You also want the volume to be persistent across many containers in the database. Docker Compose can handle all of this.